corpus. Can you confirm to us that you understand that any suspension of habeas corpus requires an act of Congress?
President Lincoln executed habeas corpus in the past with retroactive action by Congress. I believe that any president that was able to do that in the past, it should be afforded to our current day president. This president has never said he's going to do this. He's never communicated to me or his administration that they're going to consider suspending habeas corpus, but I do think the Constitution allows them the right to consider it.
When we saw what happened with, how many times has habeas corpus been suspended in our country?
Once that I know of.
4 times.
For certain. I'm not certain if those were...
The instance that you were referring to was one where the courts subsequently showed that Congress is the one that has the ability. Do you know what section of the Constitution the suspension clause of habeas corpus is in?
I do not. Nope.
Do you know which article it is in?
No, I do not, sir.
Okay, well, it is in Article 1. Do you know which branch of government Article 1 outlines the tasks and the responsibilities for?
Yes.
Which one?
This may look like a tense exchange between a senator and a cabinet secretary, but it's actually a window into how power understands its own limits. What's really being tested here is whether constitutional guardrails still function when national security is invoked. This raises broader questions about who decides when rights bend and who is supposed to stop that from happening. In this video, we'll break down how oversight, executive authority, and constitutional responsibility collide inside today's Homeland Security system.
Senator Kim.
Thank you, Chairman. Madam Secretary, a press release came out from the Department of Homeland Security a couple days ago. It said that members of Congress in New Jersey that went to the Delaney Hall ICE detention facility could, quote, could have just scheduled a tour. I guess I'd just like to hear from you if you can confirm that you understand that members of Congress by law are allowed to show up unannounced to conduct oversight visits of ICE detention facilities.
Yes, they can conduct oversight, but Senator, what I would ask is that they understand that that doesn't mean they could show up with a mob with the intention to break in and assault law enforcement officers. That's what happened at Delaney Hall last week.
You're familiar
is that those individuals and those members of Congress were surrounded by criminals, creating criminal and perpetuating criminal acts.
You understand that
but when you show up and ask for a tour, we've facilitated every single tour that every member of Congress has wanted. We've always done that, and we have to, when we have a tour, also make sure that we've addressed security concerns and have enough staff and all of that, and we were accommodating that when those individuals showed up and they decided instead to break in.
You know that they were already on the ICE premise, already facilitating into having the tour when there was the arrest of the mayor. They were not breaking into.
They had broken through the outer fence and they were interior on federal property when the crimes occurred.
They were invited in by ICE as the ICE was preparing to give them a tour.
That doesn't give them an excuse to start punching law enforcement officers.
You understand that they were not storming the fence?
Well, I don't understand. Are you making excuses for their behavior that day?
I'm just trying to clarify what exactly happened.
Oversight is an important part of what Congress does and what you provide to our department, and we welcome it. We give tours when members of Congress ask for it. We just ask that they not be politicized, that they actually are there to provide the oversight that is needed to ensure that we're doing due diligence in our job.
And if I were to show up at ICE detention facility unannounced, I would be let in.
Yes, I would ask that you would be allowing us to secure the officers that we need to give you an appropriate tour, that we'd be able to cover the other bases and posts that they would have to leave to come and facilitate that. We may have to call other people in to help cover some of that because of the extra responsibilities, but we can do that.
I've done this before. I just wanted to make sure I heard that from you. I wanted to just go back to something that was raised earlier about habeas corpus. Can you confirm to us that you understand that any suspension of habeas corpus requires an act of Congress?
President Lincoln executed habeas corpus in the past with retroactive action by Congress. I believe that any president that was able to do that in the past, it should be afforded to our current day president. This president has never said he's going to do this. He's never communicated to me or his administration that they're going to consider suspending habeas corpus, but I do think the Constitution allows them the right to consider it.
When we saw what happened with, how many times has habeas corpus been suspended in our country?
Once that I know of.
4 times.
For certain. I'm not certain if those were...
The instance that you were referring to was one where the courts subsequently showed that Congress is the one that has the ability. Do you know what section of the Constitution the suspension clause of habeas corpus is in?
I do not. Nope.
Do you know which article it is in?
No, I do not, sir.
Okay, well, it is in Article 1. Do you know which branch of government Article 1 outlines the tasks and the responsibilities for?
Yes.
Which one?
Congress.
Yes. Stephen Miller has said that he is actively considering, that there is active consideration of habeas corpus. Have you had a conversation with Stephen Miller about suspending habeas corpus?
I have not.
When it comes to FEMA, this is something I'm concerned about. Being from New Jersey, we've had challenges with Superstorm Sandy and others in the past. I was alarmed when I saw some reports that the acting head, Richardson, said last Thursday that he's about 80 to 85% done with the hurricane season plan, given that we are just days away from hurricane season beginning. I just wanted to ask you, is he done with his hurricane preparedness plan?
He is working diligently with the employees at FEMA and are prepared for hurricane season. What you
Have
referenced.
you seen this plan? Have you seen this plan? Is he?
Yes, I've been
presented it to
actively
you?
engaged in hurricane response and preparation.
seen
We're
the plan?
pre-staging people, pre-staging equipment.
Is that
We're
plan
making sure that
something-
we have tabletop exercise we're running through with all of our regions on what their response will be. It's been very extensive how we've laid out this plan.
Will you be able to share that plan with this committee?
I will check and make sure
Yeah,
that
if
I
you can
can,
check
but
on
I would think that we would be able to do that. I can't see any reason that
Just
would
one
be.
last thing. A couple weeks ago, you said that you were considering restarting in-person training at the National Fire Academy.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to ask if you're prepared to tell this committee that that you are moving forward with restarting in-person trainings.
Yes, the plan is to do that again. So
That has been approved
yeah.
to restart?
Yes, it has been.
Okay, thank you. And with that, I yield back.
Senator Scott.
Sure. Thank you, Chairman.
Just moments ago, the exchange we witnessed between Senator Andy Kim and Secretary Kristi Noem cut straight to the heart of a growing tension inside the American system. A tension between oversight and authority, between accountability and control, between what the law permits and how power chooses to interpret it. What began as a narrow dispute over a visit to a detention facility in New Jersey quickly unfolded into something far larger. A revealing moment. A moment where the language of governance collided with the language of accusation. Senator Kim pressed a simple but fundamental point. By law, members of Congress are permitted to conduct oversight visits to federal facilities without advance notice. That authority is not symbolic. It is not ceremonial. It exists because transparency is meant to be a safeguard against abuse, secrecy, and institutional drift. Yet the response from the Department of Homeland Security reframed that visit not as oversight, but as disorder. Not as lawful supervision, but as provocation. Words like mob, criminal behavior, and politicization replace the neutral language of constitutional duty. And in that shift, something important was exposed. Oversight is not supposed to be comfortable. It is not supposed to be convenient. It exists precisely to challenge the narratives institutions tell about themselves. When oversight is redefined as disruption, when lawful presence is portrayed as intrusion, the balance of power begins to tilt. What we saw in that exchange was not merely disagreement over a tour. It was a struggle over who gets to define legitimacy, elected representatives or the agencies they are meant to oversee. Secretary Noem insisted that tours are always facilitated when requested, provided security concerns are addressed. That may be true. But the distinction Senator Kim was drawing goes deeper than scheduling. The law does not require permission slips for accountability. It requires respect for constitutional roles. And when the answer to that principle becomes conditional, when it depends on optics, coordination, or political comfort, oversight quietly loses its teeth. The tension escalated further when the discussion moved beyond the facility itself and into the realm of constitutional power, habeas corpus, a phrase heavy with history. A safeguard rooted in Article 1 of the Constitution, assigned deliberately to Congress, not the executive. Senator Kim asked direct questions. Who has the authority to suspend it? Where does that power live? And has there been discussion within the administration about exercising it? The answers were uncertain, vague, at times unaware of the very constitutional structure being referenced. That uncertainty matters. Because constitutional government does not survive on good intentions alone. It survives on clarity, on restraint, on knowing not only what power exists, but where it stops. When senior officials cannot clearly articulate which branch controls one of the most fundamental protections in American law, it raises a quiet but profound concern. Not about malice, but about preparedness. Not about conspiracy, but about competence. And this is where the hearing revealed its deeper meaning. This was not a single clash between a senator and a cabinet official. It was a snapshot of a broader moment in American governance. A moment where institutions feel pressure from all sides. political, social, operational, and respond by tightening their grip rather than opening their books. A moment where oversight is welcomed in theory, but questioned in practice. A moment where the language of security begins to crowd out the language of liberty. The conversation then moved to disaster preparedness, to hurricane response, to training programs and readiness. Important issues. Necessary issues. Yet even here, the same pattern appeared. Plans described as extensive, preparations outlined in general terms, commitments made but details deferred, transparency promised but always just one step away. This is how trust erodes. Not all at once. Not through dramatic collapse, but through small gaps between authority and accountability, between reassurance and verification, between what is said and what is shown. What Senator Kim was ultimately pressing for was not confrontation. It was confirmation. Confirmation that oversight is still respected. That constitutional boundaries are understood. That preparedness is real, not rhetorical. That power remains answerable. And what Secretary Noem's responses revealed, intentionally or not, is how fragile that balance has become. In moments like this, the health of a democracy is not measured by applause or outrage. It is measured by whether institutions can withstand scrutiny without defensiveness, by whether officials can answer direct questions without deflection, by whether the rule of law is treated as a living framework, not a talking point. Oversight is not a nuisance. It is the system working as designed. When elected representatives are portrayed as obstacles rather than stewards, something fundamental is at risk. When constitutional safeguards are discussed without precision, something foundational is weakened. And when transparency becomes conditional, trust becomes optional. This hearing was a reminder that democracy does not maintain itself. It requires vigilance. It requires knowledge. It requires citizens who pay attention not just to outcomes, but to processes. Not just to policies, but to power. Because the most important battles in a constitutional republic are often quiet ones. Fought not with slogans, but with statutes. Not with crowds, but with questions. Not with force, but with accountability. And that is why moments like this matter. If you believe oversight should remain strong, if you believe constitutional limits should remain clear, if you believe transparency should never be treated as a threat, then stay engaged. Support our work to expose the truth. Subscribe to Liberty Report USA.